Welcome back to Hot Takes and Deep Dives. And frankly, my next guest, in the words of David Letterman, needs no introduction. Please welcome to the stage. I can't believe she's here, Rosie O'Donnell.
Thank you. And the crowd goes wild. Sit down, everyone. Sit down.
I mean, do you hear the John McDee music playing in the background?
I can, actually.
I just want to jump right out of the gate and tell you we are two Long Island Jews. We're two gay Long Island Jews. Of course you're not. You are innately Jewish.
Oh, without a doubt. I'm culturally Jewish.
Culturally Jewish. At what point in your life did you discover that you were Jewish?
When I met Lori Shackner in 5th grade after my mother died, and her family had shag rugs and white leather couches and a beautiful backyard swimming pool, and the mother and father would kiss you when they saw you, and the sister would kiss you. It was like such an affectionate, amazing. And then as I met more and more and more Jewish people, families, as I grew up and older, I was like, this is what I love. People who like say their feelings out loud, unlike an Irish family where you cannot say one thing that might upset somebody. So I just love the Jewish culture. I love, so many of my friends are Jewish. It just always fit me.
And the whole Long Island connection, I would love to know, when you were, I know you grew up in Comac. Did you grow up coming to the city? Like, is that how you first discovered Broadway, just as a kid coming in?
Yes. Well, my brother Eddie would take us into the city after my mom died. Everything is before or after, so we'll start in 5th grade after. And my mom would take us to see the Rockettes and stuff. My brother Eddie brought us to see Broadway shows at the Tix booth, which he figured out as a young 13-year-old boy, and he would take all of the siblings in, usually on St. Patrick's Day, which is tomorrow, which is the day my mom died. Mm-hmm. We all cut out of school and we would go into the city and see the parade and see a Broadway show. And, so that's how it began. But we weren't kids who normally just went into the city. Sometimes I would steal money from my father's wallet, and sometimes I would come in and get, $10 standing room back in the day, and the ushers came to know me. And so I would sneak in and second act some shows when I was younger.
It was just the 25th anniversary of Rent.
I know, it's hard to believe, right?
That's hugely influential for me. I know you loved it.
Well, you're a lot younger than me. How old are you, Jess?
I'm 38.
Okay, I'm 59. So, I mean, Rent didn't hit me in the solar plexus like it hit you younger kids. I was talking about Broadway just before to a professor who was writing a book, and I was saying that I think Hamilton had a response that was unlike any other response that had ever been had, with the possible exception of Rent. But mm-hmm. I felt like so sad about Rent that Jonathan died, and I also felt like it was maybe undone. Like, I didn't think it was finished.
Well, supposedly it's not finished. It's an unfinished piece.
Right. It's an unfinished piece. And there are parts that I thought could have been better or different. But, I also took David Bowie and Iman to see it. And I said, this is supposed to be, David, this is the greatest show. You're going to love this. And about 15 minutes into it, he says, I'm going to kill you.
About Rent?
About Rent. He didn't like God. Rent. David Bowie, there's the scoop.
Jesus.
But yeah, I liked it. I thought it was a good show. I didn't think it was a fantastic, all the accolades. Now it's grown on me in the 25 years. And I think it's emblematic of a time and, of error and AIDS in some way, even though, it's a minor part of the story. Well, it's maybe a major part of the story.
Yeah, a major part. Yeah.
Yeah. It's all encapsulated in that era for me. And so it brings back good memories in certain ways, of the time period that we were in then.
Do you watch Pose? And also, did you watch the HBO at Max miniseries that just came out called It's a Sin?
I watched Pose, and I do watch Pose, and I think it's fantastic. And I have just started watching It's a Sin, when the boy has run away from his house and and founded a new community of people. But that one's really hitting you too, huh?
Phenomenal. It's the same creator as the original Queer as Folk.
No kidding.
Yes,
What's his name?
Russell T Davies, the British Queer as Folk, the original.
Oh, the British one. Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I'll definitely finish it. I just started it about 2 nights ago.
I know that you just filmed a guest spot on the new L Word. Did you watch Queer as Folk and the L Word when they were on?
Yes. And they scared me a little bit because I wasn't out, and you weren't sort of allowed to be out then. Kind of. It was like Ellen wasn't out, Will and Grace weren't on. It was kind of a different era. And so they scared me a little. Like I was like, look at all that. They're just out there doing that. But I loved them so much that I was on Queer as Folk as Sharon Gless's brief encounter of flirtation.
Yes.
I told them I would gladly do the show if they let me kiss Sharon Gless. And so they did. So I was very happy. And the L Word I watched at the beginning, and I thought, where are all these high fashion lesbians that travel in packs? I never knew that there was such a breed existed. But come to find out, they do.
Yeah, they do. They do.
And I just going back to finish my 3rd episode, and it's been really interesting to see. It's kind of where you fit in that world. How do you make a Rosie O'Donnell fit into the L Word?
Well, okay, that begs the question: how does a Rosie O'Donnell fit into the L Word?
They come up with some pretty realistic kind of storylines. I believe I'm allowed to say this. I don't know if I'm not, but I'm saying it anyway. I'm the fiance of Tina.
Right. Yeah.
So Ben and Tina have broken up, and I'm the person who's about to marry Tina. And that comes with meeting all of her group and feeling like the outsider, and like I don't have the right clothes, and I don't have the right, and they're never going to accept me, And they've written that beautifully, It's funny because I always felt like if I was really in the L Word's world, I would feel so intimidated by all of them. And so they've written that in too, that she feels a little intimidated by, Jennifer Beals, Bet's fashion look. She shows up looking like a fashion magazine, and, I'm there trying to make sure my stomach doesn't show in the shop.
I'm dying. This is amazing. Oh, I can't wait for this to air. It sounds great. The way you're describing it. I mean, everybody knew that you were cast as Tina's fiance, but what you're describing sounds very compelling and also very realistic.
Very realistic, yes. And, it allows me to kind of look through all of my self-esteem issues, and when they find out like that I, have some 12-step stuff going on, and I've got some, demons in my past and self-abuse or not taking care of myself, weight stuff. So they put it all in there, and I'm, grabbing it by both horns.
I love it. Thinking back, once the show ended, once your talk show ended, you really were such an early adopter of social media through the use of your blog. Like you were responding, and you still do to this day, respond directly to fans about very personal things.
Yeah. My shrink has always said to me, more than one shrink, she says, you have a house, but your windows have no screens, no curtains, no glass, no shades. You have no shutters. So everything comes in, and trying to build myself a house with screens and stuff has been hard. It's creating of boundaries. And, I'm not really very good at that. I feel like when people ask me a question, I answer it. I don't know. I just feel like the need to connect to people in that way. And the blog was very fulfilling. And then, when all these other things came out, Twitter, when I had Ask Ro for many years, which is exactly what Twitter is.
Yeah, I mean, Rosie, you really should be collecting checks from Twitter.
I should, really, because I did make that up before them.
You did. You really did.
And then they came to my house and they were like, let me show you how to use Twitter. And we've saved the name Rosie for you. And I was like, fantastic. And then now I'm into the TikTok, which is even more addictive than Twitter, if that's even possible.
I've always been fascinated by talk shows, specifically late night talk shows and the culture around them. There is a reputation that all talk shows are very dysfunctional environments behind the scenes. And we'll get into The View and all of that later. But I want to hear about your experience going on shows like Letterman and the others when you were a comic, like back in the very early 90s. I'm sure you went on shows when it was the 80s as well. Like, yeah. What was the culture like back then for guests?
I did like Arsenio Hall with Madonna. That was like an iconic thing that we did, and for League of Their Own. And that was, fun. And for stand up, I remember doing all the shows. All I would ask everyone after I did I look fat? Did I look fat? Like, I was obsessed, even when I was thinner, much thinner than I am now. I was obsessed with, did I look fat? Oh my God, please, God, help me with my brain. I didn't really notice the culture behind the scenes because you don't really see that. You come in from your car that's picked you up and your hair and makeup, and you get there and you're in a little room and the producers come in and you see Dave only on the set, but he was intimidating. He's intimidating as a host, as a man. I found him very hard to crack. I did it a couple times, but I never felt like there was a connection between me and him,
He famously never interacts with guests during the commercials, so much so that they play the music. Like Paul Schaefer, the band, would play the music at a decibel that would literally make it, you would have to scream. So he orchestrated it in that way. As a talk show host, what do you like from a psychological standpoint? What was that about?
It was about stay away from me, don't get too personal. That's what I think it was. And, every time I would do the show, Bill Sheff, who was the writer, a comedy writer on there, would come over and sit next to me on the couch. And he'd say, how you doing? That was very good or whatever. I always go, he doesn't even talk to me. He's like, he doesn't talk to anyone. I'm like, okay, but I felt it very unwelcoming personally. But it was great to do his show. It was, his show was so much the part of pop culture at the time. I mean, everyone was watching him. Nobody was watching Leno,
Yeah.
Everybody was watching Dave at those times.
You mentioned, the vitriol that came out of Trump about you. It really what comes to mind for me is what he would later do to Kathy Griffin. Are you still very close with her?
Oh, we know each other. We're friendly. I mean, we don't go on vacation together or talk on the phone unless there's something going on. But, I like her very much. She's a nice woman.
Like, she was very public about how all of her famous friends pretty much like scattered like rats, like Andy Cohen, Anderson Cooper. And she said that you were one of the most loyal, true people, like in that moment of crisis, that you were really there for her. It's such a strange thing that the two of you have in common. What did you say to her, when that happened?
She put up the picture and I called her right away and said, take it down. Take it down and apologize. Daniel Pearl's mother is going to see this. Now, she has remembered the story in a way that puts her in the role of, oh, I was thinking of Daniel Pearl. Trust me, she wasn't. She said, who's Daniel Pearl? Mm-hmm. So she didn't know, right? She didn't think about it. She got a free photo shoot out of it. And she did this picture for the photographer so she wouldn't have to pay the photographer. And he owns the rights to that picture. She got no money from the picture. But, I questioned why she would do that, because it is it's the art of the enemy to take off people's heads. It is not the art of American. It is the art of terrorism. And why she would do that, even though he's the most despicable human being and deserves all of the vitriol that is now hopefully coming at him based on the reality of the 4 years of hell we lived through. But I told her to do it, and I told her to apologize, and she apologized, and right then and there. And then a few months later said she felt bad that she apologized. And, listen, I tried to help Roseanne too. When Roseanne put up that text about Planet of the Apes.
Yes.
I called her and said, take it down right now and go to the hospital, because you have made something's going on emotionally and mentally with you. That's not you. That's not the you that I know. You have to go get help, Roseanne, you know?
And
And
how did she respond?
she was like, you think so? Really? Is it that big a deal? I'm like, it's that big a deal, Roseanne. Go do it right now. And she didn't do it. And she thought she could talk to, ABC. But she was really at a breaking point at that point in her life. And, people who struggled with mental health issues their whole career and have been open about it to the effect of helping millions of people. I think she, needed a little bit of guidance and protection and perspective on what she had done and what it said and what that means. I try when people, especially women, get in a sticky situation to say, is there anything I can do? Like Martha Stewart when she went to jail. I didn't really know Martha Stewart. I wasn't really friends with Martha Stewart. I had never really been out to dinner with Martha Stewart, but I left her an email that said, if you ever need anything, please let me know. I'm sorry this happened to you. It's misogyny at its best. Men do this every day, and you are getting put in jail for it, and it's absurd. And then a few months later, I got a call from her assistant saying, could I go visit her in jail? And so I did. I flew on a private plane down to Virginia, and I visited her in jail. And, I feel for the women who are people try to cancel. Not that I'm any but I've been through a lot, and I understand what it feels like when you're kind of the brunt of the joke or the person being taken down, and I try to reach out and say, hey, you're not alone. There's people out there who are standing behind you, and I'm one of them.
Before we really dive into the Rosie O'Donnell Show, you were one of the first people to interview Britney when she was 17 years old. I think she did your show like 6 times.
Yeah.
And I remember distinctly because I was watching this live. It was right after, I think you were hosting the Kids' Choice Awards and she performed. And then later that week, she was on your show. And, you were kind of joking around like, that you would ground her if she didn't wear something that was more, like covered up.
Right.
You were very motherly and warm toward her. What did you think of the Framing Britney documentary?
I think I struggle with mental health as well. I know what it's like to suffer in the spotlight. It's a tough thing to do. And she was just a baby. I remember her on the Mickey Mouse Club. She's just a kid. And I just thought of her as a kid. I feel and have felt, and I still feel very maternal towards her. Her mother leaves her with an assistant and lets her go tour around the world. She has no parental supervision. She has another woman who's happy as can be to be flying all over the world as Britney's best friend, but she needed her parents. And I don't think that her father is the best one to make decisions about her life or career. It seems that he's got a lot of his own mental health issues that he should tend to. And I wish there was someone, that could help her now. I think she needs help now, and she needs guidance, and maybe, I don't know the full story about her mental health. But it made sense to me why she cut off her hair. They had taken her kids away. They had, it made sense to me what the panic that she was under. And I think she's a great talent and a wonderful, wonderful young woman. And she shouldn't be held up as some kind of zombie psycho, which is not who she is. She's well enough to work. She's well enough to talk for herself and,
well enough to make millions of dollars for that father.
Exactly. There's something really wrong with that equation.
Did you ever reach out to her like throughout all of these years? I mean, even going back to, those really rough years in the mid 2000s?
Yes, I tried very hard to do that, and I wasn't successful because they kept her in lockdown. Like, it wasn't like she was allowed to have any access like we are to, friends and people. They kind of put her in a little cocoon, and it was hard. I haven't seen her in years. I mean, I've always spoken highly of her, and I've always loved her and wanted to take care of her, as a mom. And I hope she's all right.
Do you know if Madonna ever reached out? I ask because it seems like Britney was the one pop star who Madonna really bonded with and had a connection with, like the one pop star that came out of that boom.
I don't really know. I'm not sure about that at all, but I know that she had warm feelings towards her. And like, I remember going out to dinner with Madonna the night after she did the kiss on the Grammys with Britney and Christina.
The VMAs, the VMAs.
The VMAs, right. And, talking about that and about what that felt like for her. And
at that time, like at that dinner, like how did it feel for her?
For Madonna?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just saying that she felt, I think there was a little bit of, benediction. She was giving benediction or knighting these two young girls and sharing this, passing the spotlight, passing the baton in a way. And I thought it was so pro women and pro supportive of women, as Madonna has always been. I thought it was great. And she thought it was great. And it was a big scandal at the time. Madonna was always pushing the norms and the sexual norms and sexual mores that people have. And she's still doing that now.
What was your reaction when you saw Sandra Bernhard and Madonna show up on Letterman in matching denim outfits, making fun of Letterman and talking about going to the cubbyhole?
I was a VJ at that point. I was this 1988 or something?
Yes.
And I was a video VJ on VH1. And I remember saying on VH1, did you see them last night? Oh my God. And I said, how do you become friends with Madonna? How weird is that? How could you possibly, like, that's what my take on it was. How odd would it be to be her friend? And then we ended up being cast as best friends in the movie. So I don't remember having a real specific feeling about it because, Madonna was Madonna, she was Madonna and the biggest star in the world. And I couldn't imagine it. And I didn't know Sandra so well, but she always kind of was like one of the cool kids in school who smoked and had a black t-shirt.
Totally.
And I was the prom queen and the senior class president. So I didn't think she and I would get along necessarily so well. She scared me a little bit, but I've, come to know her and she's actually very kind and warm. But she did present an image, like even the way she was to Letterman, the way she sort of is in the world, Sandra,
Rosie's doing an impression of Sandra, Sandy
B
right now with her lips. Yeah.
My lips out there like, yeah, man. Yeah. Loving it, Dave.
Had you must have seen, before you met Madonna on the movie, certainly you had seen Truth or Dare.
Yes. Just before. I saw Truth or Dare, and I said to my then boyfriend, Michael, he said, I bet if you met her, you would be friends with her. You have so much in common. And I said, yeah, but Michael, this is why you don't know anything about show business. I'm a comedian. She's a rock star. I'm never going to meet her. There's never going to be like a party where we're hanging out. Cut to Penny Marshall literally a week later saying, Rosie, we're going to have Madonna audition. If she likes you and likes me, she'll do the movie. Don't fuck it up. That's what she said.
This used to be my playground, which, by the way, one of Madonna's best ballads was the theme for A League of Their Own. I'm not quite sure the history of the recording process or like where that song was written and recorded, but did she play it for you, considering it was the theme song?
I was there when they recorded it. So I came to the studio with her. And she had a full orchestra and she was listening to them do the beginning part. And she says, could we stop? One of the violins is sharp. And everyone's like, what? She's like, one of the violins is sharp. And everyone hit a C. D, 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 D. She says, that's the one. And they fixed the violin. And that's when I was like, so awed even more by her was to see what an amazing musician she is, what an amazing ear she has. I mean, she's really one of a kind, and her superstardom is warranted.
In fact, I would say she is incredibly underrated as a melodist and a songwriter.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, listen, she's Madonna. She's one name. She's known around the world. She can't go anywhere in public. That's who she is. She's the Beatles kind of fame. And really the first woman to do that. I mean, Cher did it with Sonny, but it wasn't like, Cher alone. And she did it alone. From a little kid in Detroit, a motherless girl, finds her way to New York as a teenager and creates this imaginary, not even imaginary. She created this extraordinary world and life for her. And she's very, very smart. That's what people don't realize about her. She reads a lot of books. And when you hear her speak, she's really, really smart.
Let's jump into the Rosie O'Donnell Show, because I really want to get your thoughts on this. The fact that you walked away from the show is unheard of, because today people are forced to leave, usually due to a scandal. I'm thinking Matt Lauer, Charlie Rose. I think famous people, or people in general, they are addicted to not only fame, but money. And it really seems like you aren't.
No, because I had enough money. That show made me so much money that if a person, like when they told me I had a certain amount of money, I said, I'm leaving. And they're like, well, we're going to give you 50 million more a year. I'm like, right. But anyone who has this much money and thinks they need more has really distorted the reason for life. Like, I remember being around a lot of Hollywood people, and they were like, you're not really going to leave, are you? I'm like, I am. And they said, why? I said, because I have enough money. And the table fell silent. And all these people said, I've never heard anyone say that in Hollywood. I'm like, I guess not. But, you're away from your kids. It takes away a lot of your time. And, I knew when I had that much money that there was no reason to work anymore.
At that point, at the 6-year mark, did you feel creatively fulfilled? You're like, I did it.
I'm done. Yes. I interviewed anyone I wanted to interview, sometimes Britney 6 times. I've interviewed friends and people I never met who became friends, and political people. And I introduced Broadway to millions, and I was done. I felt like I was done. And I think that Warner Brothers was very shocked that I didn't want to stay for the money. I would never do anything for the money. I had little children. He was about to start kindergarten, my son, or first grade. And I was like, I can't miss this. My mother died at 39. She never got a chance to do all the things that I wanted to do with my kids, go to their ball games and, be there for them at the home when, I would come home and I would be alone. My Nana would be there, my siblings. But, that's a lonely feeling as a child to lose a mother that young. And Madonna was the only person that I met who had that experience, named after their own mother. So There were a lot of connections there. I don't know why that just came in. But I also learned from her, when is enough enough? When is enough enough? Like sometimes you have to say, I have had enough. Mm-hmm. And it's something I have a hard time doing with sugar and with, food. It's not a hard time I have doing with money.
It's fascinating. It's so rare. So rare.
Yeah, I guess it is, I guess it is. People have said, oh, you were fired from your show. I'm like, I was not fired.
Who said that?
A lot of reporters or whatever, when interviewing me, said, well, did that show end, or were you fired, or did you quit? I was like, I was done, is exactly what I was. I was done, and I was ready to move into my life as a mom and spend that kind of time and focus on that. I remember taking Parker on a cruise right when the show was over, and getting to sort of know him alone for 10 days. I loved it. I loved my time alone, and I didn't really miss it at the beginning. I came to miss it later, when a great Broadway show came out or when something important was happening in the world. I thought, oh, it would be good to be back on there, but I never regretted it.
As far as the inception of the show, you were an established actress. Like you famously were, you were in the #1 movies of the summer 3 years in a row: Sleeps in Seattle, The Flintstones, and A League of Their Own. And you were an established comedian. What was the bridge to suddenly Warner Brothers investing millions of dollars starting up the talk show?
Kathy Lee Gifford. So Kathy Lee Gifford was threatening to quit Regis, as she did a lot of times. And I called my agent and said, if they really are getting rid of Kathy Lee, I will totally take that job, because I had a young baby. Parker was just born, and I wanted to be home for him. I wanted him to see his cousins and uncles and aunts and be around the family. And so when Kathy Lee decided she wasn't leaving, then Warner Brothers said, how about we just do your own? And I was like, okay, well, what I would do is the Merv Griffin show, the Mike Douglas show. That's the format, that's the template. And I'm never going to do, Who's Your Baby Daddy, or any of those Jenny Jones, Geraldo type shows, which were famous at the time. But that's how it happened. I had a small child, and Kathy Lee was threatening to leave.
I interviewed Judy Gold, and we talked. Fantastic. I'm a huge fan of Judy's, and I talked a lot about like, how did you come to write on the show, and just like the writing process for the show. That she mentioned that she was the one who put a lot of the kids, like the talented kids, on the show, and also that it was actually her son that Madonna was holding, not Lourdes.
Exactly.
Which is like an amazing bit of trivia if you know who Judy Gold is. But she was saying how it was the most fun job she ever had.
Yes, totally.
The little bit of irony here is this was the gayest show on television. Like,
yes, it was.
You, John McD, I'm sure, not only Judy, I'm certain there are other, gay writers. And yet you couldn't.
So many gay people behind the scenes. It was really the gayest show on TV.
And yet you couldn't be open about it in the way that Andy Cohen now has the luxury of time. So much time has passed. Was this like acknowledged? Like, were you guys like laughing about this, behind the scenes?
No, we were just sort of living our lives as out gay people. I mean, people say, well, you weren't out. I was out to everyone in show business. I was out to everyone in my office. I was out to, there was no surprise that I was gay. And I told Warner Brothers before they signed me that I'm gay, and I don't imagine that I would come out or make it a big deal, but I want you to know in case it comes up and you're investing all this money, I want you to be able to be sure that this is what you want to do with all knowledge of everything. And they said, no, thank you for telling us, but that's okay. And this is back in 1995 that they were doing it, right?
Yeah. How much control did you have over your wardrobe? Like the first season, by the way, I do want to mention that whoever is managing your YouTube, they are uploading all of these interviews from season 1 of the Rosie O'Donnell Show, like in crisp, like, I don't know if it's HD quality, but it's coming from your, people who want to rewatch the Rosie O'Donnell Show, it is readily available on YouTube. It's just FYI. But
let's hope Warner Brothers doesn't get a bone up their ass and stop us. But, we're the half owners of the show, and it's just little clips, and it's not like the whole episode, and we don't get into the music rights problem. And it was just like it's the 25th year. And
so you're doing that?
Yes.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay. Oh, that's amazing.
Doing it slowly and without a lot of fanfare, and hoping that it doesn't cause a big crisis over there at Warner Brothers.
What was I going to? Oh, yes, your costume. So, particularly the first season. Well, I guess like how much control or input did you have over your wardrobe? Like season 1, you were wearing like these like zoot suits,
men's suits. Yes. What happened was I refused to meet with the wardrobe people. The worst part of my career is clothing, because I always feel like, oh, I'm too fat and this doesn't look good. And, they don't really design for heavy people. And so it was very hard. I didn't know what to wear. And I'm not good at that anyway. My friends tease me and say, my style is toddler boy, because that's sort of what I like to wear.
Well, you're wearing a green hoodie.
I wear a hoodie, right? And I have sweatpants on, and that's sort of how I roll, you know? So they were like, we really have to do something. And they're like, why don't we just get her suit? They said, why don't we just get you a mannequin that fits your body and we'll just make the suits. So I had like 50 suits of the different color and, you know, they fit me and they didn't look good, but I kind of wouldn't think about it. I just didn't think about it. I refused to even like, I'm like, how come when men do a show, they don't have to worry about what they're wearing? And how come it's a big thing of what I'm wearing, you know? Mm-hmm. And we tried to get different wardrobe people in to help me with it. And, you know, frankly, it's not my strong suit.
Well, in the later years, I totally noticed in the later years, you seemed a lot more comfortable in the clothes because I guess at that point you were just wearing like very like comfortable sweaters. Like you seemed more at ease.
Yes, I was. Definitely more at ease. 100%.
One of the most infamous episodes of the Rosie O'Donnell Show was when Whitney Houston no-showed. What is the backstory there? She wouldn't leave her hotel room?
And it was Halloween. And I remember thinking, well, isn't she going to take her kid trick-or-treating? Like, that's what I was thinking, because she had a baby who sadly is gone now, too, the same age as my kids. And I remember thinking, well, surely she's going to get up and go take the kid trick-or-treating. Like, I don't know why this was in my head. And, you know, she was at that time really in a downward spiral with drugs. And it was obvious to anyone who was watching her. There was a horrible, horrible performance on the AMAs or something. Do you remember that when she had on, she was so skinny and she looked so much like an addict in the throes of it. And she had produced Cinderella for Brandy.
Yes.
And she was showing, it was the whole hour was her and Brandy on Cinderella, and she didn't show up. So I said to her crew who was already there, I said, you know, this is all on all of you, because when she dies, everyone's going to ask, why didn't you do something? And Robin, who was her partner for a while, she has had written me and told me that that was like a very big day for them, the crew around her, to think that they had to make inroads to try to help her, you know? Mm-hmm. And sadly, they didn't.
You were close friends with Robin Crawford.
No, I know Robin. I wasn't close friends, but we sat near each other at the WNBA games. We had some mutual friends in common. I knew she was Whitney's partner. She knew I was gay. We were like, you know, but we didn't like hang out together. But there was one party that we were there to get. I was there that she and Whitney were at. And in New York City, I believe it was. And that's where I met Robin. Like, and Whitney was troubled by, I think, the gay part of her life and, you know, didn't want it exposed. And it's hard in Black culture to accept gayness. It's culturally more difficult, I think.
Yes.
And so she was, and, you know, the Baptist church weighed heavily on her growing up in the church and gospel and singing. And, you know, I think that there was a lot of conflict about that.
You brought up Kelly, you know, at that time when, you know, the show was going on, there's like early years of the show, maybe like second, third season, you guys were frequently photographed, like, and it would appear in the tabloids. I'm sure that bothered you because you were not publicly. Oh, it didn't bother you?
No, because everyone in my world knew I was gay. Everyone. People who interviewed me knew I was gay. They didn't print it. This was a different time. Like, it was a time when it was just kept under the rug. People just didn't talk about it, you know? Mm-hmm. And I would bring Kelly to every Emmy Award, or, you know, we would sit next to each other. We would walk in together, even though my publicist, Lois Smith, at the time was like, you know, you guys could walk in separately. I'm like, but we're not. So there you go.
Right.
You know, she was an older woman and she had been Marilyn Monroe's publicist. And I was like, no, we're going to walk in here like the couple that we are. And so that's what we did. And nobody ever really, I mean, Joan Rivers, sorry, I need my charger. Joan Rivers, you know, made a joke about me at the very beginning of my career when I was in Vanity Fair with a young, you know, sexy, like for League of Their Own. And then there was the guy who was ironing the sheets who was gorgeous, who was a young gay guy, and they put him in the pajama bottoms and had me like straddle him so you saw his back.
Mm-hmm.
And Joan Rivers was like, oh, please, she wants that to be Katie Lang. She doesn't want that to be that guy. Now, this was at a time when that was a career-killing move. This was when League of Their Own was first coming out. So that annoyed me that she did that. That annoyed me. But people taking pictures of me in my life, it didn't really bother me. I mean,
it actually makes me feel good. It's surprising, but it makes me feel good to hear it didn't bother you. I have to tell you, at that time, I was young. I was like in high school and knew I was gay, but was not out to anybody. I was, like 10th grade, and seeing the images of you guys, it truly gave me comfort to know that maybe there'd be hope for me, just to know that you were out there, seeing the two of you together.
There were so few role models back then. There weren't even Jane and Lily weren't out. Right. Lily Tomlin, nobody was really out. Everyone knew about Jane and Lily, but nobody was talking about it. It wasn't people were outing her or anything. It was just sort of an understood thing. And so there was no one for you to look towards to say, oh, there's a reflection of me. And I felt the same way. People said, I was just speaking to a woman who's doing something on the show in her book. And she said, you had Kay Ballard on 6 times. And I'm like, she was one of the only lesbians that I saw on TV, even though she was never out in her life. But there was something about Kay Ballard that I'm like, I know that. I know something. Kay Ballard and I, there was something there. There wasn't couples for me to look up to think, oh, that's what my life will be like. I just had to sort of do it on my own. I knew I wanted to be a mother. There was no doubt I was going to be a mother. And so I did it. I waited till I had done a lot of movies, and I did a Broadway show, and I was like, now I'm ready.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that too, knowing when you're done with something and knowing when it's time to move forward. Those are really pretty big deals those days.
Can we jump into The View?
Sure.
All right. You've talked about that part of the disconnect with Barbara Walters was that you grew up seeing her as a feminist icon, and you had to
But she's not a feminist.
Yes.
It was shocking to find out. But it's okay, because women were taught at her age, at her time, that women competed against each other. They didn't play on teams together. They had no Title IX. She grew up in a whole different era.
Well, they came up through the boys' club.
Of course. You
had said that she was just completely inaccessible and non-supportive during the Trump thing.
Oh, yes, that was true. During the Trump thing. So the Trump thing happened and she was off on that day. And then, she lived in the world of Donald Trump. I did not. I'm never going to be at a party where Donald Trump is. I'm never going to be, we don't go in the same circles. But Barbara Walters was in that circle and felt threatened by him. A lot of people were afraid of him, including, I think, Barbara Walters. And so she tried to sort of calm it down with Trump, and he took her letter and put it in the press. And, I tried to call her over the Christmas break to talk to her about it. She was on a cruise ship, I think, with David Geffen or something. And we had it out when we came back. We had it out in the dressing room about things that were way too personal to bring up. Mm-hmm. And I brought them up, and I felt regretful, since I talked about her relationship with her daughter, which is none of my business, and put her on the spot. And Bill Getty was so upset, everybody was upset. And we came out and did the show that day, though. Mm-hmm. There was a show that we all 4 did. It was a rocky place that we were in, but we got through it, and, have seen each other since. And she's up there now, and she deserves respect, and she deserves to be honored for all that her work has been. And, I don't want to be someone coming down on her, but it was rocky between she and I. We knew each other before The View because Cindy Berger was is my publicist and is Barbara's as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there were a lot of times that Cindy would take Barbara out to dinner and I would go with them. And we would go to shows, we would go, so we had sort of a relationship before we did The View.
You've talked about how there's an amazing Watch What Happens Live after show that you did with Joy Behar, and it's truly one of the most entertaining little 15-minute clips. And in there, you're talking about just how dysfunctional The View is backstage. You can't talk about anything. Apparently, people are in, staffers are in relationships with other staffers. You cannot acknowledge anything.
Even when it's right in your face. So it was right in my face. I saw a little boy run up to a man and hugged him. And I said to the mother, I didn't know you were with so-and-so. And the mother looked horrified and said, what are you talking about? And come to find out that the husband is married and that this baby and that Barbara knew that had happened and said no one can talk about it on the set. But then I walked in, nobody gave me that speech. Mm-hmm. Nobody said what you can or can't talk about. And I was used to being the boss on my show where I would just say whatever, we would talk about things. I don't know. It was very much, and she had Bill Getty, who I don't think is very pro-feminist, pro-women. He's the opposite, and he and I did not get along.
Right.
And that was very obvious. He was afraid I was going to have him fired. I had no interest in taking that job. I just wanted it to be a better show,
Joy Behar has talked about the fact that she kept a diary during your first run on the show. Was she ever going to publish this diary?
I don't know. I don't know.
It's got to be amazing.
Yeah, I guess if people are still interested.
Oh, they are. Trust.
It's a long time ago.
No, trust me. Rosie, people want to know. We want Joy Behar's diary.
Have you heard what happened on the View, on the talk? Sharon Osbourne, now it's pulled off the air.
I know.
It's on hiatus. I wonder if it'll come back.
I know. Actually, on the subject of Bill Getty, is it true that he would feed Elizabeth Hasselbeck counterpoints, conservative talking points and counterpoints to your statements in her ear? Like he would feed her?
I don't know, but I know he did it every single day. He would go into her dressing room and talk to her about what the Republican talking points were for that day. So how I came to do it was I would get the Republican talking points and I would look, so I would be prepared on what she was going to say, but, she's an interesting person. I tried no matter what to love her. I took her kids to Sesame Street and I took her to her first Broadway show. And I don't really know what she's about. Mm-hmm. I said on something that I had a crush on her, but it was not a sexualized crush. It was just like a girl crush. Like she was the MVP of a Division I softball team. That was impressive to me.
Right.
And it also let me know she'd been around a lot of lesbians before. Uh-huh. Right. Which is just statistical. Right. So I thought, she had biceps. She was fit. She was
on season 2 of Survivor.
Right. She was a cute little girl, but I was in no way predatory or wanting her or sexualizing it. I was just showing myself love can win. Watch, I'm going to love this girl and we're going to get over our differences. And we never did. And then when she took the quote about me having a crush on her, saying how it was like if a man had a crush on her, I'm like, oh, dear God, like women are predatory like that. Women are not.
Yeah. Rosie, I can't thank you enough. I mean, I guess just like a final thought, like in all the years you've had this sphere of influence, all the interviews you've done, is there anything that you've never been asked that you actually wanted to speak on? Like something that you genuinely wanted someone to ask you about, just as a final thing here?
I've been interviewed so much and I never, ever put up the screen. So it's pretty much all out there. Yeah. When I having trouble with depression, I tell my Twitter people when they're all worried, you haven't been online. I'm like, well, I've been in a funk, and I just
do you,
realized,
do you still practice transcendental meditation?
yes, and it's helpful.
The Okay, so I'm dying to learn this, but it's like $5,000 to take to
Well,
learn
it
it.
wasn't for me. There was the last woman, Nancy Cook de Herrera, who was taught by the Maharishi herself, and she charged me $300 and taught me the whole thing. And it's not really that hard. If you think of a flat, every thought that you have, you close your eyes and you can just say any two words, Om Shanti. You could say any words, any Sanskrit word you want, or just be still. You can say to yourself, be still, right? And you try to drop every thought from your head. Be still, be still. And there comes a thought, and it's, oh my God, I'm going to be moving to California. And you let that thought drop like a leaf into the stream. And then you watch that leaf go down the stream and down the stream, and you go back to your Om Shanti, or be still, be still. And you do it for 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes at night. And it's very, very helpful. It restarts your computer brain.
And I know that they teach that like feelings aren't facts and they're not forever.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So you can get through whatever's happening. You can get through it.
Rosie, thank you so much. I mean,
Thank you, Jess Rothschild. I'm so glad I inspired a little lesbian from Long Island.
You really did. Look at me now.
Look at you now.
Thank you.
All right. Well, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Anytime you want me back, let me know.
Oh my God.